Hey guys, welcome back to Medical Coding with Blue. Today's episode is all about some mistakes to avoid when you are preparing for your medical coding certification exam. If you're brand new to my channel, welcome. I am Blue. I'm a medical coder. Okay guys, so this episode was inspired by the following email. So I'm going to read it and we're going to get into it. So here we go. So the viewer says, "Hi, I just finished the AAPC Medical Biller program. I failed the certification test miserably. The certification test was nothing like the practice tests. I am now finishing up the CPC program. Would you recommend getting certified in CPC? Is that one credential? Also, can you code without a certification? It seems like many places want people certified. Thanks." Okay, here's the thing. If you don't know the answers to these questions and you're about to sit for this exam, that's a problem. Guys, when it comes to preparing for the medical coding certification exams, there are 4 that employers are looking for. The CCS, that is the gold standard of medical coding credentials, because it says that you have mastered inpatient coding and outpatient coding. The CCA, the Certified Coding Associate, which says that you understand the entry level competence of inpatient coding and outpatient coding. You can do a lot of things with the CCA. I know because I had it for 13 years. I stubbornly held on to it because there's too many ignorant people out there who are talking about the CCA like they know and they don't know. You can do a lot with the CCA. I'm just saying. Then there's a CCSP, the Certified Coding Specialist Physician Based, and this says that you understand outpatient coding. Then all of these are with the American Health Information Management Association. Then there's the CPC. If you have no prior experience in coding at all, you will have an apprentice status for the first 2 years. Of course, AAPC is a business. It is a for-profit business. And so they have ways of accelerating the removal of the apprentice status with the CPC. But as I said, if you are just starting and you have no experience at all, and you didn't go through any of the other things that are needed to accelerate the removal, you will have a CPCA, a Certified Professional Coder Apprentice status for the first 2 years. Like I said, you can purchase their other products so that way you can get that apprentice status accelerated, the removal. But that's an episode for another time. This is about preparing for the exams. This person said that they failed the CPC test miserably because none of those questions were on the practice tests. When you are preparing for any of these medical coding certification exams, the practice books that you get, they're not going to have the actual questions that are on the test. Because if they did, then anybody could pass and there would be no way to gauge people's knowledge, right? Because then everybody, all they would have to do is just memorize. And if you are going through and using process of elimination, because a lot of these schools will promote that, process of elimination, so that way you can just guess your way through the test and, oh yeah, you'll learn on the job. No, this is why employers do not want to hire brand new people, because of incompetent people who are just wanting to get out there and hurry up and get in and hurry up and pass the test just by guessing their way through the test. When you are sitting for the CCS, the CCA, the CCSP, or the CPC, any one of these 4, you just need one. You just need one. And when you're sitting for any one of these, you better be ready. So one of the things that I'm going to tell y'all to avoid is looking for a specific coding exam prep book. I get that question all the time. Why my message is not heard when I'm telling you guys that what you have to do is practice. You do not need a specific book. There is not going to be a book that will cover what is on these exams exactly. AHIMA is a different exam for everybody. I always say they use a pool of 1,000,000 questions. Of course, I'm being facetious there, but there's a lot of questions and they're just pulled. And so every single person has a different exam. There's no way to have the same exact exam. Now, I don't know, because I'm not with AAPC, but I don't know how they set their exams up. All I know is that it is 100 questions and that you have to get through these. And of course, they're all multiple choice, okay? But the thing is, if you are guessing your way through a test, that is the quickest way to a downfall. Because while you may get lucky and pass the certification exam, guess what's going to happen when you get out in the real world? You're going to get tested again and again and again and again by these employers, because they're going to be looking for competence. If they give you a chance and say, well, you know, this person is new, but let's give them an assessment test. Let's see how they do. If you can't pass that assessment test, you are not getting in anywhere. So I strongly suggest, before you go and you take your certification exam, that you are actually putting in the work. The 2 coding manuals that I recommend, the workbooks for studying, ICD-10-CM, ICD-10-PCS, if you have to have that on your exam, if you're taking like the CCS or the CCA, right? You have to have ICD-10-PCS, CPT, those are the 3 main ones, right? And so the books that I recommend to learn those, the 2 workbooks that I recommend, is the first book is called ICD-10-CM and ICD-10-PCS Coding Handbook with the Answers, and that is by Nellie Leon Chizen. That book and the link is in the description box below. If you want to get a book that is a few years older, like a 2022, that's okay, because it has the same questions as the current year. Some of the codes have been updated, but not all of them. It's not going to be so drastic that you're not going to be able to you work with an older book with new coding manuals and still be able to figure it out. That book is fantastic for learning ICD-10-CM and ICD-10-PCS. If you need, because you don't have ICD-10-PCS on your exam, maybe you're sitting for the CPC or the CCSP, you can go ahead and skip the ICD-10-PCS questions, but work through the ICD-10-CM questions. That book is fantastic for learning those things. If you have ICD-10-PCS, then by all means work through the entire book. But that is going to be your prep when it comes to the diagnosis coding and the inpatient procedure coding, if you happen to have that on your exam. For the CPT side, it doesn't matter if you're taking an HEMA exam or, of course, the CPC exam, but I recommend the CPC study guide. Why? Even if you're taking an HEMA exam, the CCS, CCA, or the CCSP, because we all use the same CPT code set. That book is perfectly written, and I'm not with AAPC. They do not pay me. This is not an ad for them. But what I will say is, when it comes to good tools for coders, I will recommend whoever it is, okay? I do not do this East Coast, West Coast crap that, just because I'm with this association, I'm not going to talk about this one. Absolutely not. Employers are looking for a HEMA or AAPC certified people. So I am okay to talk about either one, all right? But what I'm saying is AAPC did a fantastic job on that book, because the way they broke down CPT, and they broke down every single chapter, the way that they did it was really great, because it's very simple, straightforward, and it has all of the answers in that book. Now, if you're telling me, well, I bought all the prep books for the CCSP, or I bought the prep book for the CCA or the CCS, or, whatever, again, those questions that are in those books, and especially if you get the ones from HEMA, they are not going to be on the test. I've had people who told me before, it was a gentleman who told me before, oh, well, I memorized all of those questions in the CCS exam prep book, so I should be fine. He failed. He failed. Because again, what is the bulk of these exams? The bulk of these exams, the certification exams, is coding knowledge and skill. For example, okay, and you can go to whichever association you're going to, and you can look at the domains for that specific exam. But for example, okay, I'm on the AHEMA website right now. I am looking at the exam content outline for the CCS, right? What is the bulk of this test? The bulk of this test is coding knowledge and skill. That is 39 to 41% of the exam is your coding knowledge and skill. This isn't taking into account the separate case studies, okay, which is also coding knowledge and skill. So you want to make sure that you're thinking about that when you are getting ready for your exam. What is the bulk of this exam? The bulk of this exam is the coding. If you have not worked through the Nelly book, that's the ICD-10-CM and ICD-10-PCS coding handbook with the answers. If you have not worked through that one, if you have not worked through the CPC study guide, you are not ready. You are not ready if you have not completely worked through both of these. Why? What is that going to do for you? That is going to get you a lot quicker. It is going to help you to understand, okay, this is where I really need to drill down, because I understand how to look up codes, and I understand the thing about sequencing for this particular section, but maybe not for this section. And what are you doing with the multiple choice questions that are like in the CPC study guide? You are covering up the multiple choice. So that way you have to actually use your brain, and when you're looking up these codes, and so that way you can drill down and see, okay, this section I need to make sure that I'm doing a little bit more study on because I'm not quite getting it. That's how you can really get to what you need to learn and study on more when you are studying for these exams. These exams are open book. You will have your coding manuals with you. You do not have to worry about memorizing codes. The problem is that you are going to have to make sure that you are studying so that you are proficient when you're going through these exam prep books, right? Not exam prep books, but the coding manuals. The coding manuals. The second thing that I would tell y'all to avoid when you are getting ready to study for your medical coding certification exam is tabbing. Tabbing, writing, highlighting. These are 3 wastes of your time. I don't want to hear people telling me, oh, no, Blue, that's how I learn. These coding manuals are reference books. The faster you understand that and the faster you start using them as they are intended, the better and more crisp your coding will be, the sharper your codes and the more specific your code selections will be. Because you're not going to sit here and be distracted by all of this writing, all the writing that I don't understand. Why are y'all writing in the coding manuals? Your ICD-10-CM, your CPT, your HCPCS, ICD-10-PCS. Why are you writing in it? These books are written by doctors and scholars who know what they're talking about. You as the coder, you or the biller, you just need to learn how to use the coding manual. Don't highlight, don't tab, don't write. Don't do any of those things. Because when you have tabs at the side of your book, if you are using the book like you're supposed to, those tabs will get in your way. And you will start to tear your pages. And you cannot have tape on your pages, okay? So that's just one thing to kind of look out for. If you have excessive writing in your book, guess what? If you're going to a Pearson VUE testing center, they can tell you you cannot come in with these books because there's too much writing. And before somebody comes on here and says, oh no, Blue, I wrote it in my book and that was okay. Okay. The rules state you cannot have excessive writing in your books. Some notes are okay, very little writing is okay, but when you start writing a bunch of things, it makes them think that you're trying to cheat. These tests are expensive. Why would you even risk it? And again, do you think that you have time to look at these notes? Because the CCS exam has 107 questions on it. It's a 4-hour exam. So it gives you a little over 2 minutes per question, but you got to think about this. You have a multiple choice section and you have a case studies. So you have to have time in order to break those down and think about them and go through that. And still 4 hours goes by just like that. So it's not a long 4 hours. It is a fast 4 hours. So again, if you are practicing with your book like you're supposed to, that's what's going to help you to pass your test. Oh, why does my thing always do this? Always this is the second time this has happened. So that's the thing, guys. You have to understand this. When you are practicing, it is only for your benefit. It is only going to help you get faster looking up the codes, because that's all you have. That's all you got when you are working in this is yourself and those codes. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and turn this light on over here. So that's what you need to know about that. So avoid that. Also, avoid cramming. The lady said that she had failed the test miserably because, none of those practice questions were on the actual exam. Well, I could have said that, but there's probably a good chance she was probably also cramming for that exam. When you cram for an exam, it puts a lot of pressure on your brain. You're already feeling nerves, right? Because do you know if you're going to get this or not? Do you know if you're going to pass this exam? You've got all of these things going on in your mind. And the more you stress your brain because you're trying to fit everything in and you haven't been studying like you're supposed to, and I tell you guys all the time, you need 20 hours per week when you are in your coding program. When you are concentrating on preparing yourself for your exam, I tell you no more than 90 days from the day you graduate from your program should you be studying for your exam, because the longer you take to take your exam, you say, oh, I just need a little bit more time. You drag it out and then it's like a year later and then you've forgotten everything. So I tell people, if you're studying like you're supposed to, you do 20 hours per week during your program, and it is possible even if you have a full-time job and kids and farm animals and all this other good stuff, it's really quick, okay? You can fit in 20 hours per week. 3.5 hours, Monday through Friday, that's 17.5 hours. And you do not do them all in one sitting. You break them up 30 minutes at a time or 60 minutes at a time. 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes at lunchtime, 30 minutes on your drive home. You could be listening to something, or you could be using flashcards when you're eating lunch. Then you do your workbooks for 1 hour. You take a break because you're working any longer than an hour, you're going to burn yourself out. Then you do that for another hour. Okay, after your break, you do that for another hour. That's 3.5 hours. That's 17.5 hours you've done in 5 days. And then you just have 2.5 hours on a Saturday or Sunday. And then you have the rest of the time for yourself and your family, your loved ones, your pets. You have all of that time. So it's not like you can't get in the time. It's just making yourself aware that this is what you have to do right now to learn. And then you're not going to be cramming at the last minute. You're not going to be one of these people trying to learn things the night before. If you're doing that, you're setting yourself up to fail. Because while you may get lucky, you might pass that test, there's a good chance you're not going to, because you're not ready. Okay? So don't put that on yourself. Don't make all of this study and all of this, this money that you spent trying to get into this and trying to get everything figured out. Don't waste it by overdoing it and then getting upset because you didn't pass because you were trying to memorize questions from a prep book. The prep book is only meant as a prep book. It is not meant to be like this is what exactly is on the exam. So going back to the CCS exam content outline example, right? So if you're looking at this, it says coding knowledge and skills. I get all the time, Blue, what is on the test? Other than what I see on the exam content outline, you can see the same thing because it's available online on the AHIMA website. So it says here, you're looking at it, of course, it's saying ICD-10-CM, the CPT, the HCPCS. You got to understand about the sequencing. How do we understand sequencing? By looking at the ICD-10-CM coding guidelines, which I have explained previously how to listen to them, not doing it again. You guys can figure it out, or you can look at my older videos and find the link there. Or if you want to join my Patreon channel, I have the instructions on the website, because I used to talk about how to listen to the guidelines, and then I had a bunch of people telling me, oh, the voice sounds so boring and it just put me to sleep. Okay, so I had one too many people doing that. No, we're not doing that anymore then. Y'all can figure it out then, okay? Because again, I'm trying to help you. And I'm not a tech savvy person. Clearly not, because you see my videos are not edited. I don't do all that fancy stuff. But even I know you can change the voice. You can even change the speed of the voice. So that way, by listening to it, you're still getting that ambient learning. I'm just saying, okay? And then it says apply present on admission guidelines. If you don't know what present on admission even means, let your fingers do the walking and do a Google search. Present on admission. You will see a ton of papers come up about that. And you can say, okay, yeah, I understand that now. Okay, it's just as simple as that. It is as simple as that. Then there's NCCI. You have to understand what that means. Medical necessity, understand what it means, okay? And then you have DRG, APCs, MCCs, and CCs. You need to understand what those mean. And when do those, what is it all about? What do those classifications mean? So that's something that you need to study. If you don't know what it is, you can just go to the Google machine and you can be able to find a bunch of information on that. You do not need to buy a book. You do not need to do all of these extra purchases just to understand something that's available on the internet. Okay. Then they have domain 2, which is the coding documentation. And this is resolve conflicting documentation in the health record, like admission type and laterality. Ensure all required documentation for assigning a specific code is available within the body of the health record. And then verify and validate documentation within the health record. You know where you can get information about this? The Medicare Learning Network. They have a lot of really helpful study guides in there, like booklets. They have the Global Surgical booklet that has all the information about the Global Surgical package, which is really wonderful. I love it. They have things about modifiers. They have a booklet about evaluation and management. There is a smorgasbord of really helpful information on the Medicare Learning Network. All you have to do is Google it and you will see it pop right up. Okay. Provider queries. If you don't know how to write a proper query, Google that. What is a proper query? And you'll see all these articles talking about what constitutes a proper query and how you're not supposed to lead the witness. Then there's regulatory compliance. PSIs, which is patient safety indicators. You don't know about that? You didn't learn about that in your school? That's what the Google machine is for, okay? HIPAA guidelines, everybody should know that. HIPAA is very important. That those privacy things about the administrative safeguards, the technical safeguards, the physical safeguards, you should know about those things. You should understand about breach reporting. When there is a breach in HIPAA, when do you report, and what is the number of people affected, and how soon, and what should you do? Those are things that you should already know. Coders should already know this. And when you're taking the time to properly learn, you will learn this, okay? The UHDDS, right? Which is the Uniform Hospital Discharge Data Set. Ensure compliance with that. Google what it is. So that way you can answer that question, right? Then there's information technologies, distinguish between the various types of electronic health record, demonstrate a basic understanding of encoding and grouper software, exhibit and understand computer-assisted coding software and its impact on coding, and then ensure compliance with high-tech guidelines. Again, all of these things are easily searchable, easily Googleable, and you can find all the information you need there and touch on all those things. But look at the weight of those questions. Like the information technologies is 9 to 11%. Not that you shouldn't know it, but keep in mind where you have to spend your time and what you should be spending your time with. Okay, don't tear your hair out for something that is not going to be a bulk part of this exam if you're really wanting to get to like the heart of the matter. You can still work on it, but again, don't stress yourself out. Where do you need to spend the most of your time? The most of your time needs to be with learning coding, actually looking up the codes, understanding those guidelines. You don't have to memorize them because you'll have the book with you, but you still need to have a good grasp of how to code. Okay? The HEMA Standards of Ethical Coding is out there as well, okay? But that's under regulatory compliance. That's 18 to 22%. Another heavy hitter, okay? That's a heavy part of this test. Next to your coding knowledge and skill, that's a heavy part of this exam. So you want to make sure that you understand what patient safety indicators are, ensure compliance with the HIPAA guidelines, understand what those things are, right? And then, of course, again, those HEMA Standards of Ethical Coding. This is a very comprehensively laid out menu. And coding documentation is 18 to 22, another heavy part of this exam. So understanding those things and really concentrating on that, putting in those 20 hours per week, you're not going to be writing me saying things like I failed. You're going to be writing me saying, hey, Blue, I passed because I did what you said, you know. This is going to take an adult mind to do. Because remember when we were kids and we had all the time in the world to study? Studying was much easier when you're in high school, right? Because why? That was your job, being in school, you know. Some of us had jobs when we were in high school, but not all of us. But the majority of what you're doing is school. When you're an adult, it's different. You have adult responsibilities and kids to feed, a roof to keep over your head. You know what I'm saying? So you have all of these things. And when you don't study correctly and you change the way that you're studying, because you can't study like you did when you were a kid. No one has the time to stay up all night and you know, be drinking energy drinks and all of those kinds of things like you did when you were in high school or in college, right? You don't have time to do all that. So when you break it down in a much more straightforward way, you're going to get better results, which is actually sitting down with your book and working with it. And the last thing that I will tell y'all to avoid is getting into these boot camps for the test prep when you have not been studying. If you have been studying and you want to do a boot camp, by all means, or like a thing where they prep you for the test, if you really want to do that, it's fine. But if you've been studying, only if you've been studying. But if you have not been studying and you think doing a test prep is going to help you, is going to guarantee you to pass, absolutely not. You are not ready. And that's just like throwing your money away. Because why? You did not do the thing that you needed to do to prepare yourself. And yes, I'm going to be very direct because that's what this industry requires. It requires competent people who understand what they're doing. And the only way you're going to be able to do that is by actually putting in the time with those books and studying. I've done a ton of other videos where I talk about my exam prep tips. These are just some of the things that you have to avoid, okay? Which is not cramming at the last minute and trying to get into these these boot camps for this exam prep. And if you have not been studying, you need to study, okay? So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. But best of luck to you guys, and quit relying on the practice exam books because those questions are not on the exam. This is my advice anyway. So with that said, I'm going to wrap this one up. Thank you guys so much for joining me. If this video helped you, please like, subscribe, and share, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.